They thought I was weak. They thought I would sit back and accept it. That I wouldn't fight. That I wouldn't win. Margaret had always underestimated me. From the moment Adam and I got married, she made it clear that I was nothing more than an inconvenience. She was the type of woman who believed her son was the center of the universe, that no woman would ever be good enough for him. She would make backhanded comments about my career, my family, even the way I folded laundry. And Adam? He never defended me. He would smile, chuckle nervously, and say something like, "That's just how Mom is." I tolerated it. For years I tolerated it. But then she went too far, She took my home, The apartment had belonged to my grandmother, a woman who had raised me when my own parents were too absent to care. It was more than just walls and a roof. It was the place where I felt safe, where I had grown into the woman I was. When she passed, she left it to me. Me. Not Adam. Not Margaret. Me, But Margaret saw an opportunity. She had always been cunning, always looking for ways to tighten her grip on Adam, and when she realized the apartment was solely in my name, she must have seen it as an insult. Her son, living in a place that wasn't his. Unacceptable. I don't know how she did it, not at first, but one day Adam sat me down, his expression neutral, as if he were telling me we were out of milk. "There's been a change with the apartment," he said, barely meeting my eyes. "What kind of change?" I asked, a cold dread creeping into my stomach. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's in my name now." I laughed. I actually laughed, because the idea was so ridiculous, so outrageous, that it didn't even seem real. "That's not possible," I said. "It's mine." "It was," he corrected, "but we updated the paperwork." We. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process his words. "What do you mean, we?" He finally looked at me then, his face blank, rehearsed. "Guilty. Mom helped with the legal side of things," he admitted. "She knows people who handle property transfers. It's all done. All done, As if that was the end of it. As if I would just nod and accept that my home had been taken from me. I stood up, my heart pounding in my ears. "You forged my signature." He flinched. "It was for the best. Mom said." I never let him finish that sentence. I didn't need to hear it. I already knew. Mom said it was the right thing to do. Mom said a man should own his home. Mom said I wasn't worthy of something that belonged to my family. I walked out of the room, my hands trembling. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to hurt the people who had done this to me. But I did none of those things. Instead, I waited. For 6 months, I played the role of the silent, obedient wife. Margaret basked in her victory, and Adam remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath my skin. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. Adam wasn't smart with money. That had always been his flaw. He spent without thinking, lived beyond his means, always assuming that there would be a safety net. And now that he owned the apartment, that meant it could be leveraged. Margaret, ever the enabler, encouraged him to take out a loan, she must have said. "It's an investment. It's for your future." I watched as they dug themselves deeper and deeper. The loans piled up. The debts grew. And then finally, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. A bank auction notice. Margaret and Adam were on the verge of losing everything. Their arrogance had destroyed them, and I was ready to deliver the final blow. I bought it back. Legally. Officially. Permanently. And when they arrived at the apartment, suitcases in hand, expecting me to let them back in, I met them at the door. Margaret's face was pale, her hands shaking. "Rachel, please. We have nowhere else to go." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "That's funny," I mused, "because that's exactly how I felt when you stole my home." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Adam looked lost, as if he had only just now realized the gravity of what he had done. He had sided with his mother. He had taken from me, betrayed me, and expected me to forgive him. I smiled, a sweet, satisfied smile, and then I stepped back inside and closed the door in their faces. Nothing's really changed, I had said. Dot. But everything had, Dot. Margaret screamed, a raw, desperate sound, the kind that comes from someone who has never known true consequences until now. She banged on the door, her voice shrill and cracking. "You can't do this! This is our home!" I stood on the other side, my hands pressed flat against the cool wood, listening. A part of me, a small, deeply buried part, wondered if I should feel guilty, if I should feel something for the woman who had spent years trying to destroy me. But that part was drowned out by the overwhelming satisfaction curling in my chest. Adam was silent. I imagined him standing there, shoulders slumped, looking at his mother in horror. This wasn't supposed to happen. Margaret had promised him security, power, a future where he was in control. Instead, she had led him into ruin. "Rachel, please." Adam finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "We don't have anywhere else to go." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you stole from me." Silence. For the first time, Margaret had no response, no cutting remark, no condescending insult. Just the sound of her breathing, ragged and uneven. Dot. And then, footsteps. I waited until they faded completely before I exhaled, a deep, shaking breath that carried away the last traces of the woman I used to be. I had won, Dot, but I wasn't done yet. Margaret had spent years treating me like I was disposable, like I was nothing. She had manipulated Adam into betraying me, convinced him that taking what was mine was his right, Dot. Now, I was going to show them what it felt like to lose everything, Dot. And I knew exactly where to start, Dot. The next morning, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the city. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, in a way it hadn't been for months. No Margaret hovering, no Adam's excuses filling the air. Just me, Dot. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly in control, Dot. But there was still unfinished business. Margaret and Adam weren't just out of my home. They were out in the cold, drowning in debt, scrambling to find a way to survive. And I wanted to make sure they felt every second of it. I started with the legal side of things. Adam had signed over ownership of the apartment to himself without my consent. Fraud, plain and simple. I had let it slide because taking it back was my priority. But now, I wanted consequences. I contacted a lawyer, someone sharp, ruthless, and eager to sink their teeth into a case like this. Forgery, fraudulent transfer of property, financial manipulation, she mused, flipping through the documents I provided. Your husband and his mother are in deep trouble. Ex-husband. That word lingered at the edge of my mind, waiting to be spoken. I want it all pursued, I said. Every charge that sticks, I want it to stick hard. The lawyer gave me a knowing smile. You're not just looking for justice. No, I admitted. I'm looking for ruin. And ruin was exactly what they got. Margaret and Adam had been holding on by a thread, scrambling to negotiate with creditors, hoping for some kind of miracle. But when the fraud investigation was opened, that thread snapped. The financial institutions that had loaned them money panicked, pulling their remaining credit, demanding immediate repayment. Margaret tried everything, pleading, negotiating, even threatening. But the world doesn't bend for desperate old women who have nothing left to offer. As for Adam, he tried to reach me. Calls, messages, emails. At first, they were filled with anger, accusations. You ruined my life. You didn't have to do this. Then came the guilt. Rachel, I made a mistake. I was manipulated. I was weak. Please. I miss you. I read every message, every pathetic attempt to rewrite history, and I felt nothing. Margaret had spent years trying to break me. Adam had betrayed me without hesitation. And now they were homeless. Now they had nothing. And I had everything. But the real victory, I was finally free. Freedom tasted sweeter than I imagined. Every morning I woke up without the weight of their presence in my life. No more tense silences. No more Margaret's judgmental stares. No more Adam's cowardly apologies. His excuses. His pathetic attempts to justify betraying me. But I wasn't done watching them crumble. Not yet. I knew they had nowhere to go. Margaret's so-called friends, other women like her, wealthy, controlling, vicious, had abandoned her the moment her money disappeared. She had spent years looking down on people, treating kindness as a weakness, power as her birthright. And now, she had no power. And people remembered. She burned every bridge she ever had, assuming she would never need them. Now, when she begged for help, doors shut in her face. I made sure to keep tabs on her. I wanted to see how far she would fall. And oh, how she fell. The house she had lived in. Her kingdom was gone, repossessed, auctioned, stripped of its expensive furniture and history. I found out she was living in a motel, the kind of place that reeked of desperation, where people like her never imagined they would end up. The thought made me smile. Adam was no better. He had tried to get a job, any job, but the fraud case I had opened followed him everywhere. Nobody wanted to hire a man under investigation for stealing from his own wife. And with no income, no credit, and no support, he finally saw what it was like to be powerless. He still tried to contact me. His messages became more pathetic, his words dripping with regret. I didn't know what she was doing, Rachel. I swear I just listened to her because I thought she knew best. I was stupid. I was weak. But I never wanted to hurt you. Lie after lie after lie. And then finally, the last message. Please, just tell me, was it worth it? Watching us lose everything. Do you feel better now? I read it twice. Then I typed back, yes, and I blocked him. Because I did feel better. I felt alive. And for the first time in years, I was truly, completely free. But freedom wasn't just about being rid of them. It was about reclaiming myself. For too long, I had lived under Margaret's shadow, bending, compromising, keeping the peace for Adam's sake. I had ignored the red flags, the small betrayals, the way he always put her first. I had been the quiet, reasonable one, the one who swallowed her pride and let things go. No more. With my home back in my name, and my enemies crushed under the weight of their own greed, I turned my focus inward. I quit my job, the one I had taken because it was practical, because Adam had convinced me it was the smart choice. I walked into my boss's office, handed in my resignation, and walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. Then, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I traveled. Margaret had once scoffed at my love for adventure, calling it frivolous. Adam had echoed her sentiments, always hesitant to spend money on trips, on experiences, on anything that didn't fit into their vision of stability. So I packed a bag, booked a ticket, and left. I wandered through bustling streets in foreign cities, stood on quiet beaches watching the sun sink into the horizon, sat in cafes with nothing but a book and the sound of life happening around me. And while I was gone, I heard whispers. Margaret and Adam had finally hit rock bottom. The fraud case had gone through, leaving Adam with a permanent stain on his record. Margaret, once the queen of manipulation, had been reduced to a woman barely scraping by, living in a rundown apartment with a son who now resented her for ruining his life. And the best part? No one cared. The world had moved on. I had moved on. And as I sat on a balcony in a city far from Seattle, a glass of wine in hand, I finally let go of the last piece of anger I had held onto. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because they no longer mattered. I had won, and for the first time in my life, winning meant walking away. Without looking back, months passed, and the life I built for myself felt like a quiet kind of victory. No more battles, no more revenge. Just peace. I had cut away the dead weight of Margaret and Adam, and in their absence, I thrived, But then, one final message found me. An email, from an unknown address, but I knew who it was before I even opened it. Rachel, I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but I have nowhere else to turn, My mother is sick, badly sick, and we can't afford treatment. She won't admit it, but she's scared. I've never seen her like this before. We're out of options, out of resources, out of time. I know you have every reason to ignore this, but if there's any part of you that once cared for me, please, help. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, Margaret. Sick, vulnerable, dying, The woman who had spent years trying to break me now begged for my mercy, And Adam, weak, pathetic Adam, had come crawling back, hoping that the woman he had betrayed still had enough kindness left in her to save him. I closed my laptop, No response, no reaction, Just silence, Margaret had spent a lifetime building her empire, playing puppet master, controlling everyone around her. She had wielded power like a weapon, crushing anyone who stood in her way, But power, like everything else, is temporary, And when it's gone, you're left with nothing. I stepped out onto my balcony, inhaling the crisp evening air. Somewhere across the city, Margaret was suffering. Adam was watching the only person he had ever truly depended on fade away. And for the first time, they were powerless. And I was free. Weeks passed, and I didn't think about them. Not really. Their story was over for me. A closed book collecting dust in the past, But then, another message. This time, from someone unexpected. A former neighbor. Hey, Rachel. I know things were messy with Adam and his mom, but I thought you should know. Margaret passed away last night. I read it twice. Then again. But no matter how many times I blinked at the words, they didn't stir anything inside me. No sadness. No relief. Just emptiness, She was gone. Just like that, The woman who had tormented me, who had stolen from me, who had thought she was invincible. Dead. And Adam. He was alone. Truly. Completely alone. I didn't respond. The fraud case had gone through, leaving Adam with a permanent stain on his record. Margaret, once the queen of manipulation, had been reduced to a woman barely scraping by, living in a rundown apartment with a son who now resented her for ruining his life, And the best part, no one cared, The world had moved on. I had moved on, And as I sat on a balcony in a city far from Seattle, a glass of wine in hand, I finally let go of the last piece of anger I had held onto, Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because they no longer mattered. I had won, and for the first time in my life, winning meant walking away. Without looking back, months passed, and the life I built for myself felt like a quiet kind of victory. No more battles, no more revenge. Just peace. I had cut away the dead weight of Margaret and Adam, and in their absence, I thrived, But then, one final message found me, an email, from an unknown address, but I knew who it was before I even opened it. Rachel, I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but I have nowhere else to turn, My mother is sick, badly sick, and we can't afford treatment. She won't admit it, but she's scared. I've never seen her like this before. We're out of options, out of resources, out of time. I know you have every reason to ignore this, but if there's any part of you that once cared for me, please, help. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Margaret. Sick, vulnerable, dying. The woman who had spent years trying to break me now begged for my mercy. And Adam, weak, pathetic Adam, had come crawling back, hoping that the woman he had betrayed still had enough kindness left in her to save him. I closed my laptop. No response. No reaction. Just silence. Margaret had spent a lifetime building her empire, playing puppet master, controlling everyone around her. She had wielded power like a weapon, crushing anyone who stood in her way. But power, like everything else, is temporary. And when it's gone, you're left with nothing. I stepped out onto my balcony, inhaling the crisp evening air. Somewhere across the city, Margaret was suffering. Adam was watching the only person he had ever truly depended on fade away, and for the first time, they were powerless. And I was free. Weeks passed, and I didn't think about them. Not really. Their story was over for me. A closed book collecting dust in the past. But then, another message. This time from someone unexpected, a former neighbor. Hey, Rachel. I know things were messy with Adam and his mom, but I thought you should know. Margaret passed away last night. I read it twice. Then again. But no matter how many times I blinked at the words, they didn't stir anything inside me. No sadness, no relief. Just emptiness. She was gone. Just like that. The woman who had tormented me, who had stolen from me, who had thought she was invincible. Dead. And Adam, he was alone. Truly, completely alone. I didn't respond, but I did. And as I read the first line, my breath caught in my throat. You think you won, Rachel, but power never disappears. It only changes hands. My hands clenched the paper, knuckles white. Even in death, Margaret was still playing the game. And somehow, some way, she had left one last move on the board. I forced myself to keep reading, though every word felt like a trap waiting to snap shut around me. You always thought you were smarter, didn't you? That you were patient, calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike. I respected that, even admired it. But you made one mistake, Rachel. You thought taking back your home meant you had won. You thought leaving Adam in ruins was your victory. But power is not in what you take. It's in what you leave behind. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what she meant, but I could feel her presence even now, pressing down on me from beyond the grave, smirking as I sat there with my pulse hammering. By the time you read this, my name will be gone, wiped from records, from deeds, from the life I built. But you'll still be here, and you'll still be connected to him. My breath hitched. Adam is a fool, but he's your fool. You made him weak, Rachel. You let him believe I was his enemy, when in truth, you were the one who took everything from him. You taught him to hate me, and now he has no one left to hate, except you. A chill ran down my spine. He will come for you, Rachel, not with lawyers, not with threats. He will come for you in the way broken men do, desperate, reckless, with nothing left to lose, and you will learn the truth about power. You never really had it. It always belonged to the one willing to burn everything down. The last line was signed simply, elegantly, Margaret. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the letter. This was her last game, her final play. And I had no idea if she was right. But as I stepped out of the lawyer's office, the Seattle sky dull and gray above me, I felt it, that gnawing unease in my gut. Somewhere out there, Adam was alone. Margaret was gone. But her shadow still lingered. I told myself it was just a mind game, Margaret's final attempt at control, even from the grave. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that something unseen had already been set in motion. It started small, a missed call from an unknown number, a strange, lingering sensation that I was being watched as I walked home at night. My apartment, my home, felt different. Not unsafe, not invaded. Just off. Then comma, voicemail. I didn't recognize the number, but the moment I pressed play, my blood turned to ice. At first it was just breathing, heavy, unsteady. Then a low voice, thick with something I couldn't place. Rachel. Just my name. That was it. Then silence. I swallowed hard and deleted the message. I told myself it was nothing. That was my mistake. The next day, I came home late. I had been working longer hours, throwing myself into distractions. I told myself it was choice, that I just wanted to keep busy. But the truth, I didn't want to go home. Because home didn't feel safe anymore. When I finally walked through the front door, exhaustion clinging to me like a second skin, I barely registered it at first. The air smelled different. Not bad, not wrong, just off, like something had been moved, like something unfamiliar had passed through. And then, as I stepped further inside, I saw it. A single glass, placed perfectly in the center of my kitchen counter. It wasn't mine. I hadn't left it there. I hadn't used it. I hadn't even opened that cabinet in days. The weight of realization pressed against my chest. Someone had been here. And worse, they wanted me to know. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest, the blood rushing in my ears. The glass. It was innocuous, almost laughable in its simplicity. But the fact that it was there, sitting on my counter, waiting for me to notice, felt like a declaration, like someone was sending me a message. A chill crept down my spine, and I immediately scanned the rest of the apartment. The air, thick with a strange tension, seemed to close in around me. Nothing else appeared disturbed. No broken windows, no doors ajar. But the unease I felt was palpable, gnawing at my thoughts. I approached the counter slowly, my fingers hovering over the glass. There was no note, no clue as to who had left it. But I knew, deep down, that it was connected to the warning Margaret had left in her will. The words echoed in my mind. You will learn the truth about power. You never really had it. I picked up the glass, turning it over in my hand. It was clean. Too perfect. I couldn't explain why it bothered me, but it did. I set it down again, as if it might somehow shatter into 1,000 pieces of truth if I held it too long. I checked the rest of the apartment. Everything seemed normal. My bedroom, still exactly as I had left it. The bathroom, nothing out of place. It was as though the person who had come into my home had been deliberate. But why the glass? I couldn't let it go. It seemed so small, so insignificant, yet it weighed on me like a boulder, as though whoever had left it behind was toying with me, daring me to figure it out. And then, the phone call came. The same unknown number, the one I'd been avoiding. I didn't want to pick it up. I didn't want to hear anything more. But I had to. Something told me I was already in too deep. I answered it, holding my breath. Rachel. The voice again. Low. Hollow. You thought you were safe, didn't you? The words sent a shiver through my entire body. You think you've beaten me. You think I'm gone. The voice paused, and for a moment, I thought I could hear the faintest trace of laughter. But you're wrong. I felt my heart constrict in my chest. This wasn't just a prank. This wasn't some cruel joke. It was real. You want to know who I am? The voice continued, and I could hear something dark in its tone, satisfied. Look behind you. My blood froze. My fingers tightened around the phone, but my body was frozen, rooted to the spot. Dot. Look behind me. I wasn't sure if I could move. If I even wanted to. My brain screamed at me not to. My instincts told me that whatever was there would shatter everything I thought I knew. Dot. But I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, I turned. Dot. The room was empty. I exhaled, the relief almost suffocating. Nothing had changed. Nothing was different. Dot. And yet, there, on the back of the couch, was another glass. Dot, identical to the one on the counter. Dot. And this time, there was something in it. A note. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. But I did anyway. Dot. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the small piece of paper and read the single line scrawled on it. I'm not done with you yet. I dropped the paper as if it had burned me. My heart slammed against my ribcage, my breath coming in short, jagged bursts. The room seemed to close in around me again, the air thick and suffocating. Dot. They were here, whoever they were, and they weren't going anywhere. I had thought I was free, thought I had put it all behind me. But the truth was undeniable now. Margaret had been right. Power doesn't disappear. It changes hands. Dot. And I had just become the new target. I stared at the glass, the note fluttering from my hand, like some cruel, twisted reminder that this wasn't over. I tried to breathe, to calm my racing thoughts. But they kept circling, spinning faster, getting more tangled. Who was doing this? Why? The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in on me, trapping me in my own paranoia. My hands were shaking now, my mind racing to make sense of it all. The glass on the counter, the one left behind with no explanation. Then this, another one, with a note, a threat. I reached for the phone again, this time with more force, as if the simple act of picking it up could make me feel a little less vulnerable. I tried to call the police, but the moment I dialed, something inside me recoiled. What would I even say? That I was being harassed by an invisible force? That some unknown person was leaving cryptic messages for me in the form of glasses and threats? No. It sounded insane. Instead, I dialed Adam's number. I had no real reason to believe he could help me. After all, he had been complicit in so much of this. But the loneliness in me needed to reach out, to feel like I wasn't completely alone in this mess. Maybe he could shed some light on what was happening. The phone rang for too long before he picked up. Rachel. His voice was hoarse, and I could tell he had been drinking. Adam, I need your help. The words rushed out of me before I could stop them. I was desperate. My throat constricted as I continued. Someone's messing with me. They're leaving me these glasses with messages. I don't know who it is, but I think they're after me. There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought he had hung up. I almost wished he had. Rachel. His voice softened. You need to be careful. I don't know what's going on, but I think I know who it is. My heart skipped a beat. Who? It's me. His words were so simple, yet they hit me like a punch to the gut. I stumbled backward, my vision blurring, unable to comprehend. What are you talking about? I whispered. I'm the one who's been leaving the glasses. Adam's voice trembled, and I could hear the shame in it. I've been watching you. I had to, Rachel. You took everything from me, and now I'm trying to make things right. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thin, suffocating. It was as if I had just stepped into a trap, and I had no way out. No, what do you mean, make things right? The words barely left my lips. I thought I could fix things. I thought I could get control again. But all I did was make everything worse. Adam's voice cracked, and I could hear him sniffling in the background. I couldn't wrap my mind around what he was saying. Was he confessing? Was he asking for forgiveness? Or was this something darker? Something far worse than I could ever imagine. Adam, I wanted to destroy you. His words hit like shards of glass. I wanted to make you pay for what you did to me, what you took from me. The silence that followed was suffocating. I felt dizzy. My hands shook violently as I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to stay steady. The phone felt too heavy in my hands. But it wasn't enough. He continued, his voice trembling. I tried. I thought if I scared you, if I made you feel what I felt, maybe I could somehow get some of that power back. I don't know why I thought it would work. I wanted to shout, to scream at him, but I couldn't. My throat was closed up. All I could manage was a whisper. Why, Adam? Why would you do this? After everything, I don't know. His voice was barely audible. I thought I could get her back. I thought I could make it right in my head. But I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know who I am without her. Without you. The words hung in the air like a fog I couldn't escape. What was I supposed to do with this? What was he asking for? Redemption. Closure. Adam, I'm sorry. His voice was thick with emotion now. I'm so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't realize until it was too late that I had become just like her. That I was doing the same things she did to me. I've been lost. For a moment I was struck silent. What was this? Was he trying to guilt-trip me? Or was this a moment of vulnerability, of self-awareness that was long overdue? What do you want from me? I finally asked, barely able to keep the tremble out of my voice. I don't know, he answered quietly. I don't know what I want anymore. I thought I could fix it, but I can't. I hung up the phone. I didn't want to hear any more. His words echoed in my ears. A broken, hopeless confession. He was just as lost as I was. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city that had been my home for so long. The lights of Seattle shimmered beneath the clouds, as distant and cold as I felt in that moment. Margaret's shadow had loomed over me for so long, but now it felt as though Adam was taking her place. The power struggles, the manipulation, the lies. It was all so familiar. Too familiar. I could feel it, like a storm gathering on the horizon, and I knew I couldn't escape it, Dot. The truth was clear now. No one ever really won, Dot. By the time everything had come to a head, I had changed in ways I never anticipated. The desperation that once consumed me had slowly transformed into something more controlled, more focused. I wasn't after revenge anymore. I had achieved that. What I truly wanted now was justice. I had no desire for a twisted satisfaction in seeing Margaret and Adam suffer. I didn't need to relish the moment of their fall. But they needed to understand. They needed to feel the consequences of their actions. Dot, it had been months since that phone call, and I knew what had to be done. The moment had arrived. Adam had already lost his grip on whatever remained of his dignity. His mother, who had orchestrated everything from the shadows, was crumbling just as quickly. The debts were piling up. The loans that Margaret had taken out under false pretenses were about to become public. And the apartment, my apartment, was at the heart of it all. Dot. But no one ever expected me to act the way I did. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting to stop them from destroying other people's lives, like they had tried to destroy mine. And I had the power to do it. Dot. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Margaret sat there, her fingers curled around the armrests, her eyes darting nervously between her lawyer and me. Adam, as always, seemed lost. His shoulders slumped, his eyes avoiding the gaze of anyone around him. He had tried to fight it, tried to pretend he wasn't complicit, but the truth had already been laid bare. The evidence was undeniable. Dot. My lawyer had done his work well. The forged documents, the manipulation, the coercion, they were all out in the open now. And as the judge called for the verdict, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle. This was about restoring a sense of balance in my life. Margaret quote. Smugness had vanished completely. She couldn't hide the desperation in her eyes as the final ruling was handed down. She would lose the apartment. The loans she had taken out would be nullified. Her attempt to ruin my life had backfired, and now she would be exposed for everything she truly was. Someone who had stolen, manipulated, and destroyed everything in her path for her own gain. Adam's face was pale as he sat there, not knowing what to feel. The realization that he had been a pawn in his mother's game, the same game that had led to this moment, seemed to hit him like a punch to the gut. There was nothing left for him. The man who had once been so weak-willed was now realizing the depth of his mistake. I almost felt sorry for him, but the years of manipulation, the endless gaslighting, none of that deserved sympathy. The final blow came not from the courtroom, but from the media. I had strategically released the full story, exposing everything, every hidden detail, every dirty secret that Margaret had tried so hard to bury. The public didn't just condemn her, they turned on her. Her once strong grip on the social circles she'd managed to manipulate evaporated overnight. Adam, meanwhile, lost everything. His business, the one he had tried to keep afloat by forging documents and borrowing from every possible lender, collapsed under the weight of his mother's debts. It wasn't just the financial ruin that hurt him the most, though. It was the public shame. The scandal reached far beyond Seattle. His name was tarnished beyond repair. I remember the day I walked past him on the street. He looked up, his face red with shame. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but there was nothing left for him to say. The man who had betrayed me, who had been complicit in tearing my life apart, was now a shadow of the man he used to be. A's for Margaret. Her once immaculate reputation was now shattered. She lost every connection, every ally she had spent years building. Friends turned their backs on her, and she became a pariah. Her grip on her son, on everything, slipped away. There was no power left to manipulate. She was forced to face the reality of her own creation, her downfall, her loneliness, and the truth that no amount of control could protect her now. I watched all of this unfold from the sidelines. I didn't need to be the one to deliver the final blow. They did it to themselves. The downfall of both Margaret and Adam was a result of their own actions, their greed, their manipulation, and their complete lack of self-awareness. The day after the ruling, I packed up my things, leaving the apartment behind. It felt surreal, almost like I was walking away from a ghost. But I knew it was time. I needed to leave Seattle. It was no longer the city that had been my home. Now, it was a place full of too many memories, too many reminders of the people who had tried to destroy me. I moved out of the city and found a new place, a small house on the outskirts where I could start fresh. It wasn't about running away. It was about finding peace, about creating something new for myself, something that wasn't tainted by the people who had once controlled my life. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself smiling again. I had come out the other side, not unscathed, but stronger. I had finally reclaimed my life. People began to reach out to me. Those who had once believed in Margaret's perfect image, now seeing the truth of who she really was. It felt good to hear their apologies, but I didn't need their validation. What I had was my own peace, my own sense of justice. Still, the message came eventually. An email from Adam. He asked for forgiveness. He told me he was sorry for everything. I read it, but didn't reply. He had lost his chance. Weeks passed, and just as I had begun to settle into my new life, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there she stood, Margaret. Her face was haggard, her clothes disheveled, Her eyes were desperate, pleading. "Rachel, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. I've lost everything. I need your help. I can't." I looked at her, standing there in the doorway. The woman who had taken everything from me. The woman who had tried to crush my spirit and steal my home. "Margaret," I said, stepping back slightly, "you made your choices. Now live with them." I closed the door gently, Dot, and I knew deep down that I had won.